$5 million in a growth stage evolution, but a seed round through a crowdfunding platform. So in a lot of ways, from an investment perspective, if I was an outside investor, and I'll participate in some way, shape, or form, this is like the down round, but the growth round.
Yeah, it's actually
in the island of the gods.
It really is, and it's for us also the biggest impact round. Because as you know, we have raised a lot of money, and even going back to our first investment round of $57 million with Kleiner Perkins back then and another 4 VCs, the one thing they never doubted was the market. And the market has only gotten bigger over the last 15 years. So I wish somebody would have come along and said, listen, we solved the waste problem, you guys can do something else. So that would be the best thing can happen. But, it just keeps getting worse. So the market keeps getting bigger, the urgency keeps getting bigger, but at the same time, it gets more and more important to get people involved that don't just invest money, but believe in what we do, that share the story, that make other people aware of what we do. We can't live in this bubble. I think it's really time to go out there and get people involved in the process of solving the waste problem, because you see it here in Bali every day. You're a surfer.
I'm a surfer.
We're swimming in our own waste.
I'm duck diving into plastic bags and bottles. So sometimes.
Do you feel it's getting better or is it getting worse?
Certain times of the year, obviously, with the rainy season, it's horrible. It's cleaned up a little bit because we're in the dry season, but either way, it's a shitty situation. Yeah. What
I love is that at this point, because we have been through this process before, and now we are ready from a technology perspective to really tackle waste. In the past it was just wood waste we were working on. Now it's real waste streams. We can at the same time also offer this investors an incredible value proposition, because you remember the times we used to raise a $250 million valuation to institutional investors. Usually as the private investor, you don't really get a chance to get involved in a deal like this. I think it's rather unique.
And actually, to add on to that is that there hasn't been anybody out there from an entrepreneurial perspective that has held in for as long as you have in the waste to energy industry. And so investors out there, the community out there, the world out there, know that you're betting on a horse that's been there, done that, and now can do that in a small ecosystem. Really test it out. Really, once we work through the kinks, really scale it for Southeast Asia. Yeah. So it's really not even about the technology. It's just you have been 15 years in that, and I don't know anybody else that's done that.
No, I have to say,
one of the big conglomerates, once you guys get to a certain level, are going to buy you guys out.
Yeah, I think that's part of our strategy. We keep talking about this. We're going to be needing a big strategic partner, I think, in the future.
Down the road.
So we're looking at an M&A. We're looking for an IPO or bigger capital in a very, foreseeable future. But you're totally right. This is not a company anymore that you would build because you like to build startups. This is personal.
Right.
At this point,
this
right? We have
personal thing.
This is a very personal. I have other things to do. I advise on a lot of companies. It's not that I.
Stone. It's going to be like
exactly
W2E.
Yes,
waste to energy.
It's the one thing I really want to be remembered for, and it has been a tough ride. But coming back to this point, I do feel a responsibility to get this done now, because we have been through this, and I fear that if we don't do this now, nobody else will start this process of going through that much pain for so long again. So we don't solve this now, 20 years from now, we are still going to be swimming in our own diapers.
So I have a different take on that, which is you're right to a certain extent, but in reality, there's going to be groups throwing tens, 50, and $100 million worth of capital trying to solve the problem. You've already done that, and you're only raising a small amount of money with a finished product, with government-backed, support from the German government. We met at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. You've been there, done that. So to a certain extent, it's kind of it's a perfect, situation in a lot of ways. It's just a question of, can you execute? And if you're betting on the horse, you want to bet on the horse that's been there, done that, and you're the horse that's been there, done that, and you've been through the down times which is why investors should be really looking at you as a leader.
I mean, in the last interview, I was called, what was called, Pudgy? This time I'm the horse. But I can listen with it. But I mean, we have been through this process.
It's okay.
We have been through this process, and as you said, even if you put the money behind it, like people put money behind this 15 years ago, you still have to go through those stages of blowing shit up. You remember the beautiful prototype with Al Gore? It was years ago. We blew that. It was like 16 million euros back then in an afternoon. We blew up. We have been through this.
So look, you got to deal with tech, SaaS, capital raising, mafia, tipping fees, shit, plastic, yada, yada, yada. And so he's been through this. Nobody else that I know of has.
Nobody else is still in there. So I think, and I want to thank really to our team out there because, and there's going to be a different story over a beer another night, and maybe going to invite our new investors to that as well, because the perseverance we needed from our technical team during the last few years of not giving up and say, listen, taking all the cuts they've taken, all the sacrifices they have made to bring this thing to markets. I think it's going to be a book at some point, but it needs to be done, and that's really what keeps us all together, and that's what's I think motivating all these new investors coming of WeFunder right now, because they just know that this needs to be done. And maybe I'm super German still after all this time I've been gone, but this needs to be done because it's not going to get better otherwise.
So, Julian, going back to the book, if there was one tagline, what would be a word of wisdom from the experience that you've gone through the last 15 years in waste to energy? And why are you better now than when you first started?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think the one thing I can advise every startup CEO out there that's doing something similar, right? It takes a lot of resilience, right? It's really, if you look at the numbers, and we try to make this in the presentation as easy as possible, but we're looking at a global challenge. We look at so many reasons why we have the problems that we have, but at the same time, they need to be solved. And just you just have to believe to a certain extent that technology can solve our problems. Technology can make us more sustainable as the human race on this planet, because currently we're just burning through our resources so quickly, there's just no catching up. And honestly, just driving electric vehicle is not going to make that much of a difference by the end of the day. I mean, like our CO2 emissions just weighs, it's like, we have the numbers to be like about 350 million electric cars. You would have to put on the straight in order to just kind of do the same CO2 compensation. So my advice and just my experience is resilience, it's perseverance, and even when I look at other companies, by looking at problems. Because that problem has never gone away.
How are you better now?
The one thing we're really better is...
No, not we, you.
I mean, I can't build the technology, right? But I'm better now, I think, as a CEO, because I know the challenges. I've been through the growth phase. You remember we hired hundreds of engineers. We went through the roof. We're 2018, Fast Company's most innovative energy company in the world. We have been through this. We have made mistakes along the process that we are not going to repeat. And a lot of these mistakes were human-based. Like, we totally underestimated the challenge of training hundreds of engineers, for example. This is not going to happen again. We also, in the past, we underestimated how much capital it needs to really build a global company. We always thought we could bootstrap on a global level. Didn't really work. So I think from a managerial perspective, we've learned a lot. I think we have a staff now in place with our new COO, for example, that is better equipped to manage this kind of growth, and at the same time we got rid of all of our debt in the meantime, right? So we're pretty relaxed now compared to where we were a few years ago, because we don't have the big investors anymore. We don't have the big VCs, and we are not beaten up for only creating 500% of growth. We can do this for the right reasons, and we can do it at our pace with the right people and bring a great technology to market without all the craziness that might happen if you're a VC-funded company. I mean, this is why we're here.
So to sum it up, what I'm hearing you say is 150 million R&D has already gone into the company, German government support, Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator support. You've learned over the years what you're good at, what you're not good at. You now have a new CEO from Bosch. I don't know if it's publicly listed or has been mentioned, but at the end of the day, you're the heart behind the strategy of it now. Don't forget that.
Yep.
You're the heart behind it. You may not be the CEO that's needed for this right now, but you're the heart and you're advising the CEO behind the strategic CEO that you just brought in. So that from a risk perspective, from a long-term investment outlook perspective, that's a strong value proposition.
As I said, it's my baby. It's a Michael Hofmeister's baby, right, on the engineering side, whom you know quite well. The other thing I think that's in our benefit is that we simply, as bizarre as it might sound in today's world, I think we keep getting better 20% every year on a technical perspective. So that means, that every year we learn something new that nobody had the answer to a year ago. So we keep getting better every year. Our materials are getting better. Our systems are getting better. Our waste streams get more flexible. So I think there's a certain extent something that money cannot buy, that you simply have to experience, you have to learn, you have to stick with it and improve. It's not a revolution, right? It's not, everybody is always looking for this moonshot breakthrough revolution. This is an evolution of 15 years of getting better and better every year.
Right, and so with these machines, 20% doesn't sound very high, because if you were to compare that to SaaS or tech or AI or blockchain, it's exponential. It's 200% every year. It's right, but in industrial waste to energy, waste product, waste processes, 20% in comparison is a big number.
Yeah, we work in different life cycles.
It's a relative dimension.
And it said, I'm not saying growth. I mean, I think the moment now we put this into growth mode, I said technically we get about 20-25% better every year. Right. And it's like gaining weight, right? Like, if you do it long enough, even if you only gain 3 kilos per year, but you do that for 10 years, it's still 30 kilos.
How many kilos are you in?
I'm less than I used to during my rough times, right? When I was still famous, I used to weigh a lot more. No, but there's this really great point. It's about, sticking with it. It's about persistency and about this kind of knowledge that we have now accumulated with our partners of how to really make this happen. And this is why I feel that the time is right now to bring this to global markets, because, obviously you want to have all your learning, your steep learning curve, you want to have at home. You don't want to have this steep learning curve on a small island somewhere in the Philippines where you're providing waste services, because that's going to cost you 10 times more. It's got very, very complicated. So I think that learning curve has really been incredibly steep for the last years. COVID has helped us, actually. It's a very strange story, but COVID has helped us because we could go back to the lab. Everybody forgot about us for the last year and a half. So, before everybody, there was this big hype. Now everybody's like, what have you guys been doing? We've been doing exactly what we should have been doing. Stay in the lab, do university tests, get our emissions under control, get all the certificates run. And this is the point we're at. We got external validation, we got the government grant. So let's grow this thing and really just take care of the waste we have out here. I'm super excited about our project in Bali, finally going online. And you can bring your waste there and then turn it into something useful. I mean, that's a huge step.
Yeah, great. Right.
So I think this is it from us. We just wanted to let you know what we're up to. If you have any questions, Felix, anything we should answer out there, any feedback we're getting in on this, we try to answer as many questions as possible. But also, we're going to be there online, offline, obviously, as we always are, 24/7. We love to talk about waste to energy and making this a cleaner, more sustainable planet. And Matt, I want to thank you for your time coming on board.
Thank you very much.
And sticking to this incredible story. It's going to be huge. I want to thank Felix and Oliver behind the camera that are making this possible in this very, very different edition of EX Venture. It's interesting for me to be back on the other side. I've listened to hundreds of entrepreneurs over the last year and a half and giving advice. If you have advice about my presentation, maybe you didn't get it, maybe you think it sucked, please reach out to me. That's what I tell other people, to do that. Learn from the experience. We're back in the game. We're here to make this big, but we cannot do it without your support. We cannot do it without your help. And let's build an incredible future together, incredible technology. And final closing words?
Yeah. So you're supercharged when you took a break. So you've done a reset, a reboot, and you're recharged.
We're ready.
Yeah, got it.
We are ready for something big. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. This is Julian and Matt here from beautiful Canggu, Bali for EX Venture and for Zero Carbon. Go on to WeFunder, invest something. Can I say that? Yes, it's just testing the water right now. There's a lot of disclaimers, obviously, on the website because a lot of Americans listen to this thing. But it's truly worth it. I think it's an amazing opportunity. And let's make this big, right? Thanks, everybody. Good night. We see you soon.